Welcome everyone. I'm Irene Pasternack, teaching Feldenkrais with Northwest Parkinson's. And today, we've spent a lot of the month of September talking about shoulders and functions of the shoulders and neck and how to be comfortable there. And to wrap that theme up, today we're going to practice doing things wrong and knowing all the ways we can make it hard for our shoulders to function. And my inspiration for today's class came, I was doing a private session on Monday with a woman, and we worked and we got her shoulders feeling lovely. They were doing everything she wanted comfortably. And then she said at the end, could you take a look at my workstation? She spends all day on Zoom. And I took a look at her workstation, and her table was up so high and she was typing like this. And it's like, with that going on, there's nothing we can do in Feldenkrais that's going to make your shoulders happy, because it's an impossible position to leave them in. And really learning is as much about learning what not to do as learning what to do. So we're going to practice doing what not to do and then correcting it, and what not to do and correcting it. And I think that will tie this month together, and then we'll be shifting in October to a different focus for the class. So let's start by, from what you've learned over the last month, what are the things that get in your way of comfortable movement in your shoulders? What have you noticed in yourself, or have you learned in the class? Let's go ahead, Scott.
So I find it, without my really understanding how I get into that position, I find myself hunched up.
Okay.
Without, thinking about it, just that seems to be more natural than, relaxing down.
Uh-huh. So hunching up, are there any emotions associated with hunching up? Like, is there something you could think that would make you do that? Or thoughts or emotions?
I don't know, because it seems to be involuntary and I'm just not paying attention to my body.
So that might be something to play with over the week, of even keeping a piece of paper next to where you spend your time, and just whenever you notice them up, see if you could think of something that happened right before. I know for me, I hunch my shoulders if I think I'm going to be late. I hate being late. And if I'm driving somewhere, I have to say to myself, I'm not yet late yet. And if I say that, my shoulders relax. But if I don't say that, they climb up into my shoulders, and into my ears. And there may be some precursor to it. And if you can become aware of it, then you have more choices about it.
I get a similar situation with my brow being, like crunched up.
Uh-huh. Everybody crunch your brow for a moment. And what's the emotion associated with being in that posture? I have a feeling when I crunch the brow, it's like, darn, I don't quite understand that. I want to figure that out. It's sort of a intensity of or a drive that comes with that. But what other things from class have you noticed? So some of the movements we've played with are like lifting an arm to the side or lifting an arm straight up. All right, maybe we're going to need to do this more experientially. So let's try a little bit with some of the common shoulder movements. So let's first raise your arm in front of you. Okay, and just feel how easy, hard it is today as you raise your arm. Just one, just pick one to start with now. Okay, and now pull in your belly, roll back on your sit bones a little. So bring your arm down in between each time. No need to hold it up, but just kind of slouch like you're on the couch. And then lift your arm and see, was that easier or harder? Go slowly as you lift, because it's when you go slow that you can feel what's easy and what's hard. Okay. And then try coming forward on your sit bones, pushing your belly out and lifting your arm, and see which one feels a little easier.
That's a lot easier.
Yeah. So there's something about the rolling back on the sit bones and then doesn't work. Okay. Let's try hunching the shoulders. Hunch your shoulders and lift your arm. Yeah, I love the look on on your face. It's like, that didn't work. It kind of gets stuck. It's like there's a lid right on top of the shoulder and it doesn't go up further. Okay. How about clench, furrow your forehead? Kind of think really intensely, I've got to do that. And then relax your forehead with the, yeah, I wonder if I could do that. And then lift your arm. Okay. Anybody here grind their teeth or clench their teeth? Okay. So clamp your mouth shut, your lips shut, your teeth shut. Collapse all the spaces in your mouth like you're trying to touch the top of your mouth to your bottom of your mouth. And lift your arm. Does that feel like more work? And then let your jaw hang open a little. Wiggle your tongue around a little, just to like so that, but that your mouth is just a little open. And then now that makes me curious. Can you clench half your mouth and relax the other half?
No.
I'm wondering if that affects one arm more than the other. We'll play with that after we play with the other arm. Okay, so how about with your eyes? Do you ever find yourself, your eyes just kind of get fixed? They're staring ahead of you. So stare at a spot on the screen kind of intensely, like you're trying to see, you could look at my skeleton and go, what's that red spot on the spine, and kind of peer at it. And as you do that, try and lift your arm and see what it's like. And then usually our bodies do things because we want something there. Like if we move our hand, it's because we want to change the light bulb or because we want something from the cupboard. So look at your hand as you raise it. Watch it go up and see what that feels like. And then deliberately look diagonally toward the floor in the other direction as you lift your arm. And feel, does that get harder?
Diagonally, yeah.
And then go back and look at your hand as you go up. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, close your eyes for a moment with your hands just resting and notice which sit bone you have more weight on, your right or your left. And it might be a sensation that one feels a little higher than the other. And for some of us, it's not a major difference, like pounds of difference one side and the other. And then for some of us, it is a major difference, pounds. It might just be ounces, but just get a sense of which sit bone has a little bit more weight. And then as you lift your arm, notice, do you shift your weight on your sit bones a little?
Yes.
Or do you stay exactly as you are? And do a little experimenting. Shift your weight onto the sit bone on the side you're lifting your arm, or shift your weight onto the other one, and which lets your arm feel freer. What's your conclusion? Which makes it feel freer?
The opposite one.
So for many of you, the opposite one, okay? And how many for, is it the same side? Okay. So clearly there are many ways to organize the body, but what's important is you sensing for you which one feels better, because then your brain has the chance to go, oh, that feels better, I'll keep doing it. Okay. Now, how about your belly? You could either pull your belly in or push it out, and do that a few times. Pull your belly in, push it out. And before you do it with your arms, we're going to just do a little bit of belly play. Put one hand on your belly and one on your chest. And push your belly out and pull it in and feel what your chest does. That when you pull your belly in, your chest pops out a little. And when you push your belly out, your chest drops a little. And then switch your hands so the other hand is on top, and do it again. And try doing this while you hold your breath. So you inhale, hold your breath, and then move the air inside between your belly and your chest while you're holding. So in one breath, you might move the air up and down inside you a couple times. And then let it go, of course, when you need to breathe. Okay. Now, experiment. If you push your belly out, try pushing your belly out as you lift your arm. Feeling how easy is it to lift the arm? Or if you pull your belly in and hold it tight, like if you're thinking tight core, I'm going to hold everything tight, feel what that's like. Or if your belly's relaxed. All right. And we've talked a lot about the shoulder blade over the last month. So you've got this guy back there. And just as you're sitting, try and move it headward and footward and toward your spine and away from your spine. Or you can tip it so that the bottom of it comes close to the spine, or the bottom of it comes away from your spine. So there's really quite a few variations of what you can do with your shoulder blade. And let's go through them. Try lifting your shoulder blade. And when you lift your shoulder blade, your collarbone comes with it. It lifts up. And then lift your arm. And see what that's like, okay? And then try pushing your shoulder blade down behind you. So there's kind of a sensation of this going up and over in the back, and lift your arm. Try taking your shoulder blade very wide, like you can push out like you're elbowing somebody. And while you have it out wide, try and lift. Or you could arch your back so your shoulder blade comes toward your spine, and then lift. And there's an interesting timing of the shoulder blade that usually there's the part of the lifting the arm between here and here. And for that, it's easier when the shoulder blade goes back and down toward your spine. And then once your arm gets to about here, then the shoulder blade and the collarbone can lift. So there's a timing, because if you keep it down the whole time, you get stuck. And if you keep it up the whole time, you get stuck. But if you go down and then up, it becomes free. Okay. And did you like it better when the shoulder blade was in toward your spine or out away from your spine? All right, and just rest for a moment. Close your eyes. Sit toward the front of your chair with your knees wide. And see if the two shoulders feel different from each other. Just paying attention to what feels better and what feels worse if your brain has reset the amount of tension in the muscle fibers around your shoulders so that one side feels a little more relaxed than the other. Our brain needs this variation in order to come up with new movement possibilities for itself. Okay, now sitting like this with your knees wide and on the front of your chair, and your feet flat on the ground, lift your arm, looking at it, doing all the things that are working for you as you do it. So wherever your weight needs to be, pushing your chest out, looking up, feel what that's like, okay? And do it again and imagine that you are holding something heavy up there, like a platter of food or the dirty plates from the table. And look at it as you're doing it. Let your weight shift as it needs to. Okay. Imagine, how much could you hold? Right now, it's like, could you hold 1 plate or 2 plates or 10 plates? How strong do you feel? Okay, good. Bring your arm down. And now bring your feet together, cross at the ankles, tuck your feet under your chair a little. Just do something funky with your feet so they're not flat. And then lift up and see how much weight you could hold. See if you have the same feeling of strength or if it just feels a little bit more tenuous for what you're, okay, good. Or put your knees together. So like women, imagine you're wearing a skirt or you're sitting in someplace that's just a little too narrow. You don't want to touch knees with the person next to you, and then lift something. See what that feels like. Okay. And then put your knees wide, your feet flat, looking at your hand, lifting. Okay. Now take both your feet, even though your knees are wide, and roll them in so you're pressing on your big toe. And then lift. Feel how much weight you could carry. And then let your feet roll outward a little so the weight is under the 4th toe. And feel if there's a way you can use the floor that somehow pushing into the floor with your opposite foot means that you could really hold something heavy up there. Okay, come back. Just rest for a moment. Close your eyes. Take a breath in and see if the breath is going more into this side of your body than the other. Does something feel different in your jaw, your tongue, your mouth? Do your eyes feel like they're at the same height as each other? Any differences in sensation in the side of your neck? Feldenkrais was fond of saying you can't learn without mistakes. And partly it's the mistakes and the things that you can do to mess it up that give you new options. But I like that. It's very freeing. I've always been the good girl, the trying to do what's asked of me, what the teachers asked, what society asked, whatever. And when you try to fit within this rigid box, you don't make mistakes as much as when you're kind of wild and crazy. I've always envied the people who had the more freedom to make mistakes. And this playing with Feldenkrais has made that a little more possible, but sometimes I have to do it deliberately because that's part of of who I am. Okay, now let's talk about muscles for a moment. So muscles, a muscle can contract, right? And the way I think of it is, let me just turn this down a little. Camera there. Okay, so the way our muscle fibers work is there are sheets of fibers next to each other. And when they want to contract, or when they get a signal to contract, it's like they curl, a little stick pops up. I always forgot what it's called, but it just pops up and it grabs the next sheet of muscle. And then the top sheet goes down and grabs. And so if you go ahead and do this, put one hand with your other hand overlapping a little bit. And then you begin to curl your fingertips. And if you pull with both fingers, you'll feel your hands be drawn closer to each other. So that's what your muscle fibers are actually doing. And the strength of the contraction depends on how many fibers engage. So if you engage just one finger and curl both of them, your hands come closer together. And if you engage two fingers, it's a little more powerful, or three or four. So that's one way muscles engage. And that's when the two ends, so the joints at the two ends are moving closer to each other. Another way that our muscles move is we leave one end still and just the other end contracts. So try that. Don't let one hand move, really clench it down. But when you pull the fingers together, the other hand moves in. So with our shoulder, if we take the joints at the other end and we let this end of our shoulder bone move with the shoulder, then it's easier than if we leave this still. So for example, if you're taking your arm behind yourself, whoops, my skeleton's in the way, but taking your arm behind yourself, if your sternum turns with it, it's like the first kind of muscle movement. And if you leave your sternum still and bring your arm behind, it's the other kind of muscle movement. And you feel how it takes more work to bring it behind when you don't bring the sternum with you. It's like, and when you come back, if you put your hand flat, so your arm's behind you, when you bring your arm forward, if you don't move the sternum, feel how much the muscle here has to work. And then if you move the sternum at the same time, you'll feel it's less muscular effort in there to bring the arm back. Because if you can move both ends at once, the tone is distributed through the muscle. So let's play with that in the moving the shoulder. And that's really partly what we're doing. When you push your belly out and you lift up, you're distributing the work in more muscle fibers, and you're not holding yourself still and pulling against yourself. Or if you go backward, you're turning as you go. So I call this one like the bringing the other half of the movement with it is going to be easier. Okay. Now stand up for a moment and experiment with different ways of standing and lifting and imagining holding that platter up there. So you could stand, well, I can't see people's feet enough to see what experiments you're doing. Try putting your feet close together or far apart See which one lets you feel like you could lift something heavier. In standing, see how your weight shifts. Do you put your weight on the foot of the same arm you're reaching, or your weight on the other foot, which feels easier? Still just work with one arm if you would for a bit. And then experiment. Is it better or worse if you put one foot in front of each other, like you've just taken a step, or if your feet are next to each other? What are the sensations you pay attention to notice if one is better than the other? And if you put one foot in front of the other and you're still working with the same arm, which foot should go in the front? Which one makes you feel sturdier? All right, and come have a seat again. And let's try it with breathing. What happens if you hold your breath and you lift your arm? Feel what that feels like? Versus if you breathe in when you lift your arm. Or if you breathe out when you lift your arm. Okay. What's that song of there must be 30 ways to leave your lover? Is that do I have that right? I have the song, there must be 30 ways to interfere with your shoulder. We've only come up with about 10 of them so far, or 50 ways. I don't remember that title of that song. But how many more ways can we find to interfere with our shoulder? I wonder if something you do with your other hand, with your other shoulder. So say I lift just the other shoulder. What does that do to this shoulder? Or what if I hunch the other shoulder forward? Does that make this one easier or harder to lift? Or take the other one backward. All right. And get up and walk around a little and just see if one arm is swinging differently than the other. What changes are there in your body from having tried to make all these mistakes in the shoulder or find all these ways to get rid of? And then come have a seat again. What did you notice different in your walking one side to the other? But raise your hand if you notice some difference in your walking, that the side we were working on felt different, okay? And what were some of the sensations you felt?
Just felt more loosened up and more flexible.
Loosened up and flexible. Barbara, how about you?
Yeah, the right side was more open and loose.
So this is the cool thing about experimentation, is you don't have to know what the right way is. If you just try 50 things, some of them end up, your brain reorganizes itself. I find that freeing. Yeah, Barbara.
Can you repeat what you said? It's the number of fibers that are working that causes the more tighter connection?
The yeah, the molecular signals to your muscle, the chemical signals, the intensity of that is what tells how many of these little guys to, it's like they stick up, they curl, they grab, and they pull, and kind of makes a conveyor belt almost to tighten the muscle.
Okay.
Let's see if I can bring a video on that next time, because the video watching it happen is pretty fun.
I would love that, yeah. Because of the pain I get, I get a lot of pain, and it's obviously from, it's like I walk, if I exert too far and too much, and I was just very interested in that detail about it.
Okay, I will research and add more.
I can find if I can unwrap that with the brain. Thank you.
So we even ourselves out a little bit. So let's go ahead and play on your own, either imagining or doing some of the things that we have done with the other arm lifting. So yeah, just play. You can watch each other and see if you can see what the others are doing. If you run out of ideas, just as many variations as you can think of to change something in your body and sense, do I like this? Do I not like this? Oh, excuse me. And as you're experimenting, are you noticing, I do that all the time? Or that's a different way to mess up than I've ever messed up before.
I find that positions that I like are the ones that are more stable for balance.
Mm-hmm. Yes, we didn't talk about that explicitly, but that is definitely the case, because the arm is heavy and you've somehow got to counterbalance it. And if you're not balanced, you can't find the counterbalance. All right, and then
That is true.
when you've finished experimenting, get up and walk and see if your left side has loosened up a little. Usually happens much more quickly on the second side.
Just good.
Oh, have another fun variation to play with on the left side. My daughter studies Aikido, and she suggested this variation to me, which is, if you imagine lifting your arm with the top side of your arm, think about the top of your arm as you're lifting it, feel what it feels like. And then imagine that the weight, like if you put your hand down on something, the weight would be underneath the arm. So think about lifting your arm from underneath your arm versus from on top of your arm. It's just a thought difference. Does one feel easier than the other? When we lift from under, we tend to contract the muscles in the back. Whereas if you lift on top, from on top, you tend to contract the muscles right up in here, which are smaller muscles than the ones behind you. So when the muscles in the back go down, it's a little easier than when the muscles in the front shorten. I found that one is particularly helpful for standing up and sitting down. If I think when I'm sitting about the tops of my legs, as I try to stand up, I get stuck. But if I think of the weight underneath my bottom lifting up, then no problem. So just front back. Now, as you lift your arm forward, another way to say that, you could think of the back of your arm as you lift it, or the front of your arm. Sometimes just remembering we're three-dimensional makes some movement easier in the body. All right, any other ideas for mistakes you could make? Things that would get in the way of your arm? What if you kept your elbow bent? With your elbow bent, what's it like to raise versus with the elbow locked straight or softly bent? What if you roll your thumb out? What's it like to lift? Let's do work with the left side. So what's it like with your thumb out to raise your hand? Or roll your thumb down? Make a fist and raise your hand. And then soften your hand and raise it. Find a couple variations related to fist, and it's like you could push your fingers back like that and raise your hand. Or you could do, what is the old Star Trek, live long and prosper. Yeah. See what that's like to raise your arm. You can cross your middle finger over your fourth finger. You might need to use your other hand to help you do that. See what that's like to raise your arm. And then cross your fourth over your middle finger. And one of those will probably feel heavier, third over fourth or fourth over third. All right. So the homework this week, but between now and Thursday, is to find some movement you find challenging, whether it's rolling up to get out of bed in the morning or getting out of a chair or some fine motor thing, and come up with as many ways to do it wrong as you can and see if that helps to make it easier. Like if I'm teaching a kid to write within the lines, it's like, let's see how many lines you can cross with your letter. And once they can deliberately write outside the lines, all of a sudden it becomes easier to write inside the lines. Or I was working with a woman with speech aphasia where she had a stroke and she was having trouble coming up with words. So we had her coming up with as many variations, like the word dog. How many ways could you say the word dog wrong? And, doog or dig or God or whatever you come up with. And then after that, the word dog the right way stuck in her brain and she could use it when she saw one of those furry animals that wasn't a cat. And so it's just a fun technique for playing and learning. So we need to talk for a few minutes about what the focus should be for the month of October. Any requests? Al, unmute yourself, or let's see if I can, yeah, unmute yourself.
I had an interesting experience over the weekend. I was washing windows all day one day. Next day, my whole body was back to where it was 6 months ago.
Mm-hmm.
And that concerned me. And I went to bed.
So you were stiff all over?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went
So-
to bed. Good.
That's the sign that you worked a little hard. I mean, like it's the same as if you go to the gym and you work hard, the muscles get sore and it takes a day or two to recover. Are you beginning to recover from it today?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
The next day I was back to normal.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's just the sign you pushed yourself a little harder than you've been pushing yourself. And it may be that the last 6 months you've gotten more comfortable in your body, so you washed windows for more hours than you would have before. It's actually a common boomerang that happens after people do a Feldenkrais work, is that you start feeling better. So you go, oh, I can wash all the windows, and your body muscle strength might not be there yet. And so you just have to listen to yourself, and maybe next time only wash windows for 4 hours a day instead of 8 hours, or yeah.
Something like that, huh?
Yeah, but I think it's just the overuse of the muscles that day that did it. But there's that scary moment of, oh, crap, if I hurt myself, am I going backwards? And
Yeah, I was really concerned. That's the truth.
yeah. My thought when I start to panic like that is I tell myself, give myself 2 days to recover, because I'm often sore the second day after I do that than the first day. And then usually after that, it's like, oh, okay, good. No permanent damage here. But that's something you can say to yourself when that happens, to wait 2 days. Bill.
Yeah, I've been having a lot of trouble with one of my feet turns in when I walk. I'm having a hard time getting it to go back out. My right foot turns in.
So we can work on that. And let me give you a specific homework assignment. Try turning it in more, and deliberately turning it in to, like, if you imagine there's a clock underneath you, even just as you're sitting here, try turning it into 11 and to 10 and to 9 and to, or depending on which foot it is, it might be the other side of the clock. But get really good at turning it in. Because every time you're going, say, if it's your right foot and you turn to 10 and then you go back to 11, that's part of the motion that the body needs to do to turn it out. And so it begins the beginning process of that movement. And once the beginning part of the process of the movement gets clear, your brain can usually continue it. So that's how I would play with that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Feet is a good theme. There's plenty to learn in feet and legs, and they're what gets you into the balance position, like Scott was talking about, to support your arms. It's what you do from the ground up that matters for that.
My neurologist suggested taking a Botox shot into my leg, and I did that about 3 times, and the first 2 times it worked, but the third time it did not. But I had very charming looking legs.
I've heard that a lot with Botox for people, because I work with a lot of people with dystonia, and Botox is often used for that. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And so that it didn't work the third time doesn't necessarily mean it wouldn't work the fourth time. But there's also, we can work with the fine control of what does it take to turn your foot in and what does it take to turn it out, because it's muscles up in here that are the key pieces of that. And so bringing your awareness to how your whole body contributes to that, I think, will help. Yeah. Scott.
I would go with feet as well as a topic, because my feet seem to lead an independent life. They wander around all on their own, whether I'm doing anything or not.
Me too.
So when you say that, can you speak more about that? Because I'm not so familiar with what that feels like. Like
When I'm sitting here, my feet are dancing around. They're leaning from side to side. Their toes are going in and out. They're just like active.
Okay. Is that, and Bill, is that what you mean with your feet having a independent?
No, it's when I'm walking. I don't have that he's just described. I don't have that.
But you have the sense that they don't go where you expect them to go.
When I'm walking, sometimes my upper half wants to go one way and the other half wants to go somewhere else.
Sometimes when I'm walking, my toes curl up.
So the toes kind of go up and press against the top of your shoe?
No, they want to curl up the other way.
Or they want to curl under, like under, they
Yeah,
fold under? Okay.
which isn't very good for your foot.
Anybody have hammer toes? Okay.
Can I say something?
Yep. Yeah, Barbara.
Couple of things. Yeah, I sometimes will be able to walk barefoot only to feel stable. And then a few minutes later, whatever, I can only walk. I don't feel stable barefoot. I need a shoe with a good support. It just switches on me a lot.
Yeah, and you're not sure what causes the switch.
Yeah, and it's difficult when I'm out and I can't switch off.
I have this image of you going to the grocery store and like having to sit down and take your shoes off and then put them on as you go. Yeah, that would be challenging. Okay.
So maybe you incorporated this a little today, but last session you had said we were going to do some visualizing stuff and not do it physically. So I'd like to include that experience.
Thank you. I didn't make notes, and so I'd forgotten I'd said that. So I will put that back on the list. Yeah.
And I want to thank Rich for the book on sleep that he put online, put on the chat room.
So if you go to the chat, the button at the bottom, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, you can find interviews on YouTube, but with the author too.
Good information.
Good information, generally available at your libraries in all forms.
Anybody else have weird stuff going on with your feet? Who has bunions? Okay. And how many people feel more comfortable walking in shoes than barefoot? Okay. And how many people walk barefoot around your house? Okay.
Or just in socks.
Or socks, yeah, okay. Socks and barefoot are pretty similar. Socks, sometimes people find slippery.
Grippy socks.
Birkenstocks, did you say, Gus?
No, grippy socks.
Oh, grippy socks, yeah.
Because more than once, I had taken almost bad tumbles because of the slipperiness of the floor and the socks. So.
And that has to do with how we walk in socks. If you land flat with a slippery sock and the force is going straight down, you don't slide. But if you land like you're coming in at an angle, even the slightest angle, then they take off from under you. And yeah, and it depends on your floor too, carpeted versus hardwood, whether that's going to work or not.
And I have orthotics in my shoes, so that puts another dimension to it.
You have products in your shoes like arch supports or
Orthotics, yeah.
orthotics, yeah. How many other people use orthotics? Okay. And did you get those orthotics because of pain, or what was the reason for them?
It was actually making, stopping my foot from deforming, like loss of the arch, and a balance, because it enabled me to balance a little better. So those two reasons.
Okay.
And it feels like I'm on a ski slope when I put them on sometimes. It feels like I'm going downhill. And it's difficult to walk with them, but after a while you get used to it. You have to do it on a regular basis, or else there's no benefit. And you get used to your learning curve reinvents itself every time.
So I imagine the pandemic has played some interesting havoc with that because you don't go out as much. And so if you're.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, that's exactly right. I don't get out nearly as much. And when I do, I have to be on harder surfaces because I can't go walk around the grass in the house. Can't walk in the backyard or on the front lawn. I have to stay with.
How many of you limit your walking outside to hard surfaces versus soft surfaces?
Like cement pavement or driveway, street material.
Okay, so walking on uneven ground would probably be useful in the class.
You know, I thought would be useful would be go through a typical day and see the maneuvers that everybody has in common. Getting up, getting out of bed, and then we go through each one and maybe do 2 or 3 examples of what's the most effective way to do this. And you could do that for picking up the mail or
How many people find getting out of bed or into bed challenging?
sometimes sometimes I do.
All right, this gives me plenty to work on for the next group of classes. Thank you. And I will see you on Thursday. And meanwhile, have fun making mistakes.
Irene,
Yeah,
how do we give you permission to unmute us?
I'm gonna mute you and see. Marilyn, you have already given me permission. There's something you did when you signed in. You gave me permission because now I've muted you and I can unmute you.
Okay, great.
For some people, so like Bill has given me permission, Al has not given me permission, so I'd have to ask him to unmute himself. And once you give me that permission, it lasts.
Okay.
Do you only give it when you log in, or is there another time you can do it?
Let's go look down in security. So do you have a security icon down on the bottom of your screen? Or it might be for you, for participants, it might be under the mute button. So there's the mute button and there's an up arrow next to it. And I think there's a place there that you might be able to give permission.
Audio settings?
No, it would be between the select a speaker section and the test speaker and microphone section down. I think that's where it showed in the blog post. I haven't done this as a participant yet.
Pardon me, how did I give you permission to? How did I give you that permission?
That's what we're trying to figure out, Al. Yeah, this is a new feature that Zoom added this weekend, or last week. And so Scott, did you see anything down in the security menu or the?
I don't have a security menu.
Okay, that might be just for so it would be under the mute settings. And it might be if you leave the meeting and then come back in, you might get that prompt. So if you want to try doing that, if you have the link handy, I should stop the recording at this point. And